top of the pile, or certainly within the 1 minute 16s. And on an equal footing with Valtteri Bottas, the only driver so far in those 116s that wants the quickest lap we've seen in pre-season testing so far.
I'm sure we're going to pick up the pink Mercedes, and we do. Coming around the last corner, it's
P2.
A 1:17.442.
7 tenths off in that final sector, and it is once again that final sector that Mercedes is making all the difference. We've now seen Racing Point, AlphaTauri, a bunch of cars quick as Bottas through sectors 1 and 2, but just not able to compete through that final sector. And it's where they made the difference in the Grand Prix last year.
It is. So we've seen a bit of curb damage, haven't we? And I guess that's inevitable. Verstappen this morning, I think Magnussen's had the odd bit. Renault as well has had some curb damage, but I don't think it will affect their thought on anything to do with the setup of cars. Just one of these things that happens.
Some questions coming in on hashtag F1 inbox. Keep them coming. We've got some great ones here. Around the same thing. Ryan James Bolton wants to know, do you think McLaren will give us a surprise in Australia? And I know it's a little bit further down. Somebody had asked what's the most interesting thing you've seen on the McLaren? What's the most interesting bit of tech that you've seen on the McLaren this year? Because we've not really been saying much about McLaren. They've just been kind of getting on with the program.
The most interesting thing I've seen on the McLaren this morning is the new front wing. So we are now starting to see new bits arrive. There was a transit van that came in about an hour ago with a load of new Red Bull stuff. Don't know whether it will be fitted in time for this afternoon's session, or whether it's just to get into the system ready for Wednesday next week to start the second test. We should just underline, if you didn't see, Lance Stroll's time was on the yellow tyre, the medium C3, I believe. Solid yellow line. Correct me if I'm wrong. C3. So that was the time that he was on. Here we go. Kvyat on a soft tyre.
Oh, and he's up again.
He is. So yeah, the new front wing. Fair bit of difference actually. Bit of a difference on the main plane. Some difference on the angle of the top flap as well. So that's really intricate. That's impressed me. What else on the McLaren?
We had different side pods, didn't we, to the launch spec car that we saw at the start of the week?
Yes, but nothing.
There's nothing on the car that stands out that makes you say, golly, that's interesting, I hadn't seen that before.
Not yet. No. Let's follow Kvyat here. So he has the car certainly this morning. They are going to change halfway through, I believe.
It's a very tidy looking lap.
Comes around the last corner. Opens the DRS.
And it's only P2.
Takes P2.
Hey guys, I thought the use of screens to block the garages was banned for testing this year.
Not when the driver has just had a little accident, or when they are about to take the floor off, the floor is off, or where they've just put the floor back on. So instead you get people with wide hips standing in the way of suspension changes, like it has. But that is the reason. Actually, I was just a thought on this. I think it has been accepted by the teams that is the right compromise, that the screens were just something that everybody was doing because everybody else was doing it. Nobody was going to stop voluntarily and take the screens down, because why would they if everyone else was doing it? And it was one of those F1 things where they kind of needed saving from themselves a little bit. And once you take the screens down, it depressurizes the whole pit lane environment. It allows a a stress-free environment. I'm not saying that it was a particularly stressful, but when screens went back, there was always a rush. Sometimes photographers would get in the way in the past when the screens were up. It was all a bit of a mess. And now we're doing live testing, and it's part of the show, and it's been so valuable not only to the viewers but also to the teams by seeing what everybody else is doing. I think as the quid pro quo with that, you're not going to have the screens, and so that's accepted.
Do you remember when Montoya turned up in F1 and he spent first sort of 5-6 races sitting on the steps outside the Williams hospitality unit, and all the photographers got all the photos they needed of him and Connie, and then they sort of left them alone after that? The drivers that hide themselves away always get followed by a throng of photographers. But Juan had sort of figured out, right, if I sit here, then they'll get everything they need, and then they'll just leave me. It was a similar sort of thing, with the garages being constantly open. As you said, there isn't that immediate rush of photographers to get the shot of the car as it comes out of the garage.
Yeah. Are you saying that was a deliberate tactic by Montoya, or that was just the way it happened in the US? And
so he just thought he would be.
I mean, that's true, and heaven knows there are enough time-saving and effort-saving things that drivers could do if they wanted to do that might make their life easier. For example, interviews at testing or interviews travelling to and from races. Jackie Stewart was always great at this, wasn't he? If there was somebody from a newspaper or a magazine who wanted 2 hours of his time, or nice shove, very nice.
I mean, they're just innovating all over the place.
It's a hand-saving operation.
He knows he's on camera now.
If I don't need to use my hands, Andrew Shovlin, one of the chief engineers at Mercedes, if I need to use my hands for something else, I can just stick the phone in. It's like some of those motorcycle delivery drivers that you see have that phone stuck to their hands-free system. Anyway, if you have time travelling to a race, sorry, we should do the end of Latifi's lap, seeing as he's gone green in both sectors.
He has.
On the yellow tyre, comes round, still looking good, knows he's not going to throw it off. DRS open, and that is improved up to, well, it's not up to, is it? It's still P10, but up to a 19.0. Just for reference, Grosjean next up on 9th with a 18.7. So 0.3 of a second off. So just to finish the Jackie Stewart recommendation, if you've got a journalist who wants 3 hours of your time, why not invite him or her to Heathrow Airport or wherever to sit with you on a plane when you're going to, I don't know, Monaco or Nice or somewhere like that. It's not time that you're needing for yourself if you're happy just to talk on a plane to somebody, and it's time efficiently used.
Yeah.
And isn't that, you wonder about drivers sitting, taking selfies themselves in hoodies saying, Barcelona, here I come, or taking pictures out of the plane window, the plane taking off and saying, it's race week or it's race day, or I'm coming for you, Monaco. You could spend that time more
Imagine
easily.
how many interviews all the teams could do on the way to Australia, and then we wouldn't need to bother them with interview requests when we get to Melbourne.
Yeah, maybe that's slightly long session to be talking to journalists. There are movies to catch up with.
Do you do that thing over the winter months of not watching movies so you've got some to watch in the first couple of flyaways of the year?
Not really. I go and see stuff if I want to go and see it. Went to see 1917.
Any good?
Yes, very good, very good. A few more edits than I'd like. As someone who likes a one-shot wonder with the Notebook, which is a one-shot wonder, it's always one shot. Once we start, we never stop, and it's got no edits in. The amount of edits in 1917 is just cheating, basically. It's not one shot at all.
Ted throwing shade.
It's not one shot
on
at all.
Sam Mendes.
How many after six edits in that film? I stopped counting. Every time a tree comes through shot, it's an edit.
That's going to be on the movie poster, isn't it? 1917. It's no Ted's Notebook.
It's not more edits than a Notebook.
Interesting question here, and this is something I've seen a lot of people raising on social media. And it's from Stephen van der Stack. Isn't Mercedes' toe wheel trick breaking the Parc Fermé rules when they change the toe? Because obviously when you go into Parc Fermé, when qualifying starts, you're not allowed to change the setup of the car, and that would include things such as toe, one would imagine, no? So if you can change the toe, are you not breaking Parc Fermé?
What's your tweeter's name?
Stephen.
Stephen, email helmut.marco@redbullracing.com. Not his real email address, but it might
Who
be
knows?
for all
It
we
might
know.
be. It might be.
And tell him, because I think that's worth investigating.
Isn't it? That's a really good point.
The more I think about it, the less ridiculous that sounds. Actually.
And as we were saying this morning, if you can change the ride height of the car, is that anyway?
Whether they get any traction with the ride height thing will decide way beyond the Parc Fermé discussion, won't it? Because
True.
if they deem, and a lawyer can argue that in fact this thing does change the ride height, that is verboten.
So it's
and they'll get it banned on that. Red Bull or Ferrari would get it banned on that basis. Before
the
we get
tweet was
to Parc Fermé.
from Stephen van der Stack.
Thank you, Stephen.
And so to repeat it, isn't Mercedes toe wheel trick breaking the Parc Fermé rules when they change the toe? Just to repeat that. It's it's a really good question.
And Parc Fermé starts at the beginning of qualifying.
Beginning of quali.
So they couldn't use it in qualifying. And then
Well,
use it
that's
in
the thing.
race.
If they use it in quali, are they breaking Parc Fermé rules?
Parc Fermé finishes once the race starts.
So they could use it during the race,
Yeah.
but not during qualifying.
Any more?
That's a great question.
I'm not sure that they would accept that the system changes the setup of the car. Everyone else probably would, because if you're changing the toe, you are changing the setup of the car. But I think they would probably find a way of saying that doesn't.
Remains to be seen, doesn't it?
Hello, Jolyon Palmer.
Hello, Joe. Hi, guys. How are we doing? Very good. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. We're just digesting the slight Vettel disappointment, power unit problem, engine problem. So that's it for him for the morning. They're going to change the power unit, and he's going to get back out in the afternoon. So Sebastian also talking yesterday about his illness, his fever that he had. He said he had it earlier on in the week. He thought he got rid of it, and then it came back, and he felt a bit sick and a bit feverish and a bit sweaty. Nobody asked him if he had to self-isolate, which is probably good.
So what? It was a fever-like symptom.
Well, it was a fever-like fever, like a flu-type fever. Flu.
Yeah.
He said the word.
Fever-like fever.
He
Yeah.
said flu. He said I had a bit of flu, a bit of a fever last week. I thought I got it, but then it came back on the first day, so I didn't drive.
Is he allowed in the McLaren hospitality?
Well, if he's not self-isolating, then probably yes.
I don't think that's the thing with the McLaren hospitality, whether you're self-isolating it.
I don't think it matters. It's only if you've been to China within the last 14 days. You're not
Well,
allowed.
and then 14 days elapsed, then you can go into the McLaren hospitality.
Yes.
You're still fine.
As we said,
What if you've got a cold?
it doesn't matter the fact that Frankie's sitting in the media centre and we're all sitting with him and then going in and out of the McLaren hospitality unit. We put our hands up.
What are you making of-
How are you getting to Australia?
Are you going by
via
train?
Singapore.
Singapore?
Singapore.
Okay. You going to Australia?
Yeah, I haven't worked it out yet, but probably Dubai.
Okay. I'm Taiwan.
Are you? What airline are you
Yeah.
taking to Taiwan?
China Airlines.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Went to Taiwan a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Lovely place.
Yeah.
Stopped off between Malaysia and Japan.
Okay. I've never tried it. I mean, Taipei, apparently Taiwan Airport. Taiwan Airport. Not Taiwan, that's the name of the airport, it's like Heathrow. Apparently is great, and their new A350 planes, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Anyway,
Nice.
that's not on the list, I believe, to connections that are banned into Australia. I think it's okay.
This is a nice question.
You look very worried as you're saying that.
Well, it's
I've
only
not
mainland.
consulted this.
They
but-
extended the ban, didn't they, Australia? If you're even if you're
Yes.
connecting through Shanghai, by the time you get to,
Well, it's like Cathay have
Melbourne.
cancelled a lot of flights as well, connecting through Hong Kong.
I think Hong Kong's still okay actually. As far as whether Australia's
Well, I
going to
was
let you
due
through
to
the
be
door.
flying via Hong Kong on Cathay, and they cancelled our flight.
All right.
So,
Right. Sorry. Should we
Gang.
get back to
Brian Jones Bolton. Ted, do you think McLaren will fight for podiums? I think we could all have a stab at answering that.
Yes, absolutely. On a day when the top three have a little issue, and the pink Mercedes
And the big Mercedes have an issue.
are fighting with them as well. No, I don't think they're going to be. I mean, have we seen anything that suggests? I mean, Stroll went out there today, didn't he? He's done 17.4. What's the fastest that Perez did? 16.
Perez has been top 2, top 3 for the first 2 days of testing. He's looking very good.
Yeah, 17.3 Perez did yesterday.
17.3.
And Kimi topped it on a 17.0.
So
They're there or thereabouts, aren't they?
yeah, they're there or thereabouts. So yes, absolutely. And just having a look at. See, there you see some of that inside graining on that Renault, on the inside shoulder. That's kind of one of the things that might have sparked the toe theory at Mercedes. You're looking at the graining pattern of a tyre. You're thinking, okay, well, that's because we're running this toe, can't really get round it. If there's a way just to change that toe a bit, sort out that graining, that might be another benefit.
I would have thought that comes more from the camber than the toe. The graining, just more the inside edge of the tyre. So I had a thought as I left the commentary box earlier that when we saw Valtteri Bottas use the DAS earlier on, it was just before he hit the brakes for turn 1, and he just used it for a second, put it back for a second. Is there any merit in, let's say Carlos Sainz right now, we're on board with him, if he just goes bam, bam on the trombone DAS, might that put just a few degrees of tyre temp in changing the toe angle with a marginal bit of scrub? Presumably when you're changing that
just gets the front end to stick a little bit more into the corner.
And you just simply build up a couple of degrees of tyre temp, purely that, in change, because he just changed it once, twice, and it was very cold early in the morning.
Yeah.
At the end of a long straight, when you're on these long straights, the tyre temperatures are cooling all the time. The drivers in qualifying perennially have an issue with keeping the rear tyres very cool, which you need for the final sector, and getting the front tyres up to temperature for the first sector. So I don't know enough about what that would do to the tyre temperatures in terms of when you do change this toe. There might be some sort of scrub effect.
I think Mercedes are still
2 green
experimenting
sectors.
with it, aren't they? They're still trying to figure out how best to use it.
Yeah, maybe it was just a strange place for Bottas to be using it right before the braking zone for turn 1. So now Sainz comes out of this final corner on a cold day. All those tyre temperatures are just going to be cooling all the way down to turn 1.
And moves up 1 from 8th to 7th in the order for today with a 118.274, 0.05 of a second behind Giovinazzi.
It's a really interesting question, though. It's if putting it back into that position gave it that hit, if you just needed to pull it back, push it in, get a couple of degrees in, make the front end stick to go in, so you've got that bite when you turn into the corner. That's a fascinating
and potentially, I mean, why do drivers weave to build up some front tyre temperature? But when you do that, you're putting temperature through the rears as well. You're putting lateral load in. If there was any merit in building up a tiny bit of tyre temperature purely in the front tyres by using the DAS and minusculely changing the angle, but at 180 mile an hour, that's not going to affect the rears in the slightest, but the fronts are getting a tiny little scrub just moments before you hit the brakes, which would potentially increase front temps by a couple of degrees, which will prevent front lock and give you a bit more bite into the corner in the area, turn 1 qualifying in a chilly day, that you need the front temps.
Definitely, and that is one of the benefits, one of the 2 or 3 benefits that we can see at this point, and heaven knows Mercedes must think there are 4 or 5 in this wide range of benefits of how you're using this variable toe system operated by the steering wheel, the trombone steering wheel or the DAS. One of the operational uses, wide range of operational uses. But as the season goes on, they think, I know, maybe we could do a bit of DAS action on this. We can do this and that, and and make it work.
Use it as a plaster for some things that come up, and be like, I tell you what, that could be fixed maybe by the DAS. But there might be a number of different issues that I still think is the difference it will make to each individual thing will be so minimal, but maybe a lot of minimal gains, and they obviously think it's worthwhile to have on the car. It's interesting.
Now, this was something that Alex and I were discussing earlier, and it's quite an interesting talking point for this last day of the test. Ted and Jolyon, the war of words that's emerging between Racing Point and Haas. Haas, of course, who have taken a lot of influence from Ferrari. Racing Point still believe that there's something untoward between Ferrari and Haas in their relationship and the amount of potential information flow between the two teams. Haas, meanwhile, becoming quite vocal about what they believe is intrinsically a Mercedes painted pink down at Racing Point. Do we think that these two are going to start launching sort of reviews against one another? Is it just a war of words?
Well, they've effectively joined the same team. If there's a war in the midfield between the B teams and the non-B teams, Racing Point copying Mercedes have effectively become more like Haas. So there might be the war of words and a bit of bitterness either way now in testing as Haas see the
fallout.
The fallout, what's the word when you point the finger and my mind's gone blank? Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy of Racing Point over the last couple of years. But really, for me, if those two teams end up ahead of Renault and McLaren, that's where the fallout will be, and that's where the bigger changes will come, because the B team philosophy is killing. We love the brilliant designs that we see on Mercedes right now, but it's killing that with the midfielders, because all they're now doing to have a successful car is copying the old designs of the big boys. And you've got Renault and McLaren desperately trying to make their own innovations, but if they can't beat Mercedes Plus from last year, then they're losing, and they're trying kind of harder, putting more resource into it.
Two teams have just stepped into a massive glass house and started throwing stones at each other. Why do they want to do that? It's a preemptive thing, isn't it? I think if Racing Point and Haas, they start throwing enough mud at each other, then that might take some heat off each other.
It may, indeed.
But I mean, how bitter is it? How bitter has it got so far?
It's got a way to go before it's really toxic, but it's a little sour. Let's say that. We were talking about Renault, the battle for the midfield. Rosanna is down with a man who hopes to be leading that midfield down at Renault with Daniel Ricciardo.
Thank you, Will. Good morning, Daniel. How are you? How's the test going?
Good morning.
I know you guys aren't mad keen on testing, but what's it been like being back in the car? And what do you miss most over the winter break about being in the car?
No, I think it's cool. It's cool to be back in the cars, and I think obviously we're all very familiar with Barcelona in February, but it is nice to get going again. And I think I don't know. It's nice to remind yourself that I still remember how to drive. You know,
is there a fear that you suddenly will have forgotten how it all works?
Like 1%. So it's not really, but it's like 1%. You're like, hope I'm still fast. Hope I still got the courage. But I think deep down, you know, like you're gonna get into it and be fine. But like you're going like fast. You know, the first flying lap of the year, that feels cool, and your body gets a real wake up. So it's cool. It's all right. I see. I think a lot of us are walking around pretty stiff this week because reliability is so good. Everyone's just literally out of the box and we're going straight away.
You've been training hard over the winter then to get ready for the season. All eyes are on you and Esteban, of course. What's it like working with him? There's so much speculation.
Yeah, I don't know, speculation. It's cool. I see where you're going with like his previous teammate and stuff and all that. Or
well, why is he lucky to have you as a teammate?
Anyone's lucky just to have me in their life. It's really I'm silly. I'm so silly.
I think that is probably why you're one of the favourite drivers on the grid with the fans. We've got a huge crowd behind us here waiting to see Daniel and get a photo. Why are you pleased to have him as your teammate then? I'm
happy to have. I think, even from a selfish point of view, like having new teammates is really cool because it's another chance to learn from someone else. You know, none of us are perfect. You're never going to be quicker than your teammate on every corner of every lap of the year. So inevitably there's always something to learn. So I spent a year with Nico last year. That was great. And now I got a chance, you know, with a young, hungry Esteban. So I'm looking forward to it. I know also, he spent some time with Mercedes and probably got a bit of feedback, from them who have been, dominating the last few years. So I think there's a lot of positives with him coming into the team.
Did he tell you about the Haas arrangement before it all broke cover yesterday? Were you aware that this steering wheel mechanic was going to play out?
I thought you said Haas.
I mean, sorry, Das. Sorry.
Das, yeah.
I think I did say Haas.
I don't know, maybe. That's all right. You know what? I loved seeing that, and hats off to them, because they have been, I just said it, they've been dominant this whole turbo era, yet they are still the ones pushing everyone else. It should be us and everyone else pushing them, and they're not getting complacent, and I think that's why they've been so dominant. So they're setting an example right now, and as a competitor, I certainly respect that, and it's good for everyone to see how far they're willing to go.
Do you think that Renault are going to replicate something like we've seen in the Mercedes cockpit?
I don't know.
Can you? How fast can you turn something around like that?
We'll soon find out. I think everyone up until now, I've never heard of a system like that talked about, so I don't think maybe anyone had really thought about it. I don't want to say anyone, but probably not many people had thought about that, so I don't know if it was ever a conversation had, but I'm sure the conversation's happening at every team right now.
And what about you then this year? Have you laid down any targets for the team? Because you've got to make decisions about your own career. What does success look like for you this year, and what will make you put pen to paper and sign again?
Success looks like a sweaty shoe filled with champagne, I think. Delish, yes, spiffing, yes. That is what success looks like for me, and I miss it. When I used to do it, I was like, this is terrible, like, what am I doing? But I really miss it. It's a love-hate relationship with my boot. So yeah, that would certainly make things good, and first impressions on the car were positive. I think we are going to be better, but it's how much better, and that's what we got to prove to ourselves in the first few races.
So no conditions, it's not dependent on a podium or always finishing in the top 10?
No, nothing from a position point of view. Obviously I would love to get the podium and finish as high as possible, but there's nothing like, okay, if I'm not in the top 5, I'm getting out of here. It's nothing like that. It's also, you got to see things within the team, the morale and the spirit, and how much they're willing to, like Mercedes, how much they're willing to innovate and push themselves and be bold, not to be laughed at, and things like this. So yeah, it's these sort of little things, but right now I'm seeing good signs.
And what about Netflix then? Are you going to be propping up that documentary again? Are you supplementing the income with a higher appearance fee?
I'm kind of scared. I felt like I'd seen a little more of season 1 before it got released. I haven't seen much this year, so I'm like... Are
there any moments you think, I hope they haven't included that, because I was acting like a crazy?
Always. They're the ones that actually seem to find the airtime. But I think, I would say Gunter still has the swearing count, but I'm sure there's a little bit of my profanity in there as well. So we'll... yeah, I'm kind of nervous.
I think everyone's really excited.
Yeah, that's cool. As long as it does provide entertainment for a broader audience, then I think that's us doing our job.
Well, you always provide entertainment, Danny. Thanks so much for joining us in a busy testing week.
Yes, I got a planned race sim this afternoon, so you'll see me crawl out of the car this evening.
See you then.
See ya.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Rosanna. Thank you to Daniel Ricciardo. And while we were listening to the chirpy Australian, we have a new fastest time of the entire test. Do we not? As we welcome back Alex Jakes to the commentary box. A 1:16.417 by Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes on the soft tyre, the red tyre, the
C4.
There we go. We can see it on our screens. Fastest lap of testing. A 1:16.417.
Yeah, Bottas.
No surprise by who it is.
Not at all. Looking very good. Had an issue yesterday, Valtteri Bottas. So making a lot of the Ferrari issues earlier on, but he did have a problem that curtailed his running to 77 laps, but they beginning to show more of their pace as we develop through this opening test of the season into day 3, just an hour and 5 minutes of the first session today on the final day of the first test. Then there's a weekend to pore over all of this data. Lots of work in the simulator for drivers in Mercedes case, like Stoffel Van Dorn, and then we come back and
and start all over again on Wednesday, and then we will get a concrete picture. But the whole pit lane, the whole paddock really they knew already that they had to catch Mercedes, but Mercedes have shown nothing so far to change that opinion.
You impressed with that time, Jolyon?
It's put him a second clear, but on the softest tyre,
Yeah.
well, the softest one that we've seen,
Yeah.
Kvyat, Stroll, they're on this step harder, the C3, and they're a second away. I don't think it's truly a worrying time for everyone else, considering the tyre, and I think others can raise their pace, but you don't know still what Mercedes can do. Maybe they've still got 30, 50 kilos in
Yeah.
the car, and
Yeah.
they can actually take that out and then put in a mind-boggling time. But good pace, but it's only 6/10 quicker than Kimi did at the end of yesterday, so I don't think it's too frightening. It's just no one else has really gone for an outright lap time.
Well, let's see if they do a race distance. Valtteri did it was a 3/4 of a race, wasn't it, more or less, yesterday before he had to stop a little bit early with an hour to go. But if we go back to Daniel Ricciardo, that's probably worth picking up quite a lot of what the Australian was saying. So he's going to go for a race distance this afternoon in the Renault. That will really give them and us a clue as to their outright pace, because it's pretty clear when you do that. It's going to start with 100 kilos, maybe 90, something like that round here. It's kind of medium fuel consumption circuit. It's not like you can start with 80 kilos and hope to get to the end without doing a load of fuel savings. So about 90, something like that. And then we can look at the lap times and see where he is earlier on. But did his body language, did what he was saying, fill you with confidence for Daniel Ricciardo's season so far?
When he's not putting any real targets apart from him Racing Point Chewy.
Yeah, of the lap. 60 laps on the board and now second position. I didn't quite see what tyres he was on.
It was certainly a C4 or C5. I didn't see if it was
Look out the
banded or not.
It was a red stripe, was it?
It was a red stripe
on the Renault.
It was
Okay.
definitely a C4 or C5.
So that's a rough bit of context then for Bottas in the Mercedes to Ocon in the Renault on likely the same. Here we go. Number 31.
C4.
That's a
yeah,
C4.
yeah.
So that's the same as Bottas. The same time on track. Don't know the fuel loads, but 6/10, 7/10 gap between the two. I mean, if the fuel loads are the same, I think Renault could be relatively encouraged. They've also missed a fair amount of track time. Ocon's done 60 laps so far today, which is encouraging, but I think they can be encouraged with that. Same time on track as Bottas and not all that far adrift, certainly closer than they were this time last year.
Yeah, only 93 laps for Renault yesterday. Almost half of what Mercedes managed, so they're making up for lost time with that as Ocon just gets out of the way of Max Verstappen.
Back to the Ricciardo talk though. He's in for a really interesting year because it all goes back to contracts up for next year. Sebastian Vettel's been talked about. Valtteri Bottas will be talked about unless he can really take the fight more than just the first 4 races to Lewis Hamilton. Alex Albon's still an unknown. So there might be options for Ricciardo to move up and out of Renault if he's not happy with the direction they're heading. But the problem he's got is actually also keeping the spirit up. So if we're thinking maybe he seems slightly downbeat now, and it's not been the best of 2 days for them so far. Right now, on board with Esteban Ocon, they look like they're having a better time of it. Car looks pretty planted on these C4 soft tyres. But this man, Esteban Ocon, could be a real thorn in the side of Ricciardo. I was so impressed with Daniel Ricciardo last year because I know how good Nico Hülkenberg is. And Ricciardo came in first year in the team and got the better of Hülkenberg, which I thought Hülkenberg might make Ricciardo's life very difficult in the Renault. And at the end of the day, it's Hülkenberg that's out this year and Ricciardo's got a new teammate. But he's got to do all that again because Ocon's coming in, having had a year out, point to prove, and he's going to be just itching for that chance to become number one at Renault over a race-winning teammate. And if Ricciardo's motivation is not quite 100%, which it would have been this time last year entering a new team, then he might not have the option of any of those plum seats, even if those aforementioned Vettel, Bottas, Albon do move, which of course they might not anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he is going to want a return to a big three team, isn't he? He took a chance on Renault. He's going to want a shot at the Ferrari, a shot at the Mercedes, all the while Lance Stroll went over the line, did a 17.3, which is personal best of the day. To keep you updated on, there he is, on the driver that you're seeing on your screen at the moment. He wants to return to the big three, surely.
He does, yeah. Sorry, just Ocon there, when he completed that lap, he lost 0.8. So he went out on a set of C4s, did his best lap, then did a slow lap, and then went again and lost 0.8, pretty much all of it in the last sector. He did a personal best first sector, scrabbled around the middle to hold on, but then those rear tyres are already giving up in the final sector and he couldn't improve. So that was, I think, basically a one-lap wonder. It would be interesting to see if he now comes into the pits having backed off this time and he's used the best out of those tyres in more of a quali sim. For Ricciardo, sure, he needs to be back, and already talking about shoes, and he must be thinking, am I going to get that this year with Renault?
But would that be, so top three, all right, what are the options? Go back to Red Bull, say, look, I'm sorry guys, I'm sorry I left, you know, you said that I was running from a fight, can we make up? You know, that hurt, but can we make up? You said I was going for the money, that hurt, but can we make up? And I want to come back in alongside Max Verstappen. Unlikely, I would suggest.
Very unlikely.
But, you know, anything's possible. Mercedes, do they decide that Valtteri Bottas isn't the man for them going forward? Possibly. If that was the case, would they go for one of the drivers on a long piece of string, which is Russell at the moment, with Ocon's string kind of severed?
Severed, yeah.
But possibly not irretrievable.
They're not going for Russell next year, Mercedes. He looks great, but last year very difficult to judge, and this year looks like it might be very difficult to judge.
Okay, so that's possible, maybe, even though Fernando Alonso is knocking on the door.
Still about. Still looking for a way back in.
He's going to be.
Do you reckon Fernando Alonso will be 50 years old and still talking about a comeback?
Like Nigel Mansell, he never retired. You know?
Like Mika Hakkinen sabbatical.
Never retired.
Never ended.
And then Ferrari. It's probably
That's the best shot.
the best shot, but only if Sebastian decides to go hiking with Hannah and the girls, you know, for the rest of his near-term future.
Yeah,
Stroll just crossed the line and lost a second and a half there compared to his lap. Ocon didn't pit either, but he's not going very quickly. So they're both on the C4 tyres, second and third, and the tyres look like they're one-lap wonders, but clearly both the Renault and the Racing Point have got more than one lap of fuel in, and Ocon's still circulating.
But this is good stuff from Ocon. 63 laps so far, the most of anybody so far in this morning session on the final day of Test 1. 64 laps now. This is much better from Renault, isn't it? This is going to give them something to smile about.
Really good, those tyres. The times have just absolutely plummeted in 3 timed laps with cool laps in between, from a 17.1 to a 17.8, and now into the high 19s, maybe with some mistakes and traffic.
Latifi got an issue here.
Yeah. Is that going to be a yellow flag or something that's going to stop Bottas improving his time, perhaps?
No, he'll finish the lap and go.
With a 15.732
Bottas.
from a 16.4 to a 15.7 for Valtteri Bottas, again lowers the bar for the best time of the first test.
And he got it in before what might be another red flag due to the issue for Nicholas Latifi.
Yep.
That is a huge gap between first and second at the moment. On board with the Mercedes are on the C5 tyres, according to the graphic there.
A good time at
And
the
red
right
flag.
time, and we have a red flag for the recovery of Latifi. So that was fortune going in Mercedes' way once again, as they managed to get that time in. Yes, it's the softest tyre. Yes, this tyre wouldn't be used on this track, but still.
It's a red flag for Sebastian
Reds.
Vettel stopping earlier on in the session. This is the reason that we have another red flag in the final hour of the morning session on day 3. Let's listen in.
Yeah, that's an engine off. Power just immediately gone there. And it's going to clonk. PU issue then.
Yeah. What's that?
Let's listen in to what he said. He's always been a good communicator, Nicholas Latifi. There you go. So, issues for them earlier on. They had the screens up down at Williams and another one in the same session. Latifi meant to be in the car all day. He's put 44 laps on the board.
Mercedes power unit.
Yep.
Bottas had an issue yesterday, but it was an ERS issue for Bottas, and
This-
they couldn't touch the car. Latifi's safe to get out of the car, but that's the second issue now in quick succession for Mercedes engines.
Sounds a lot more mechanical. What's it like when you're in the car, when you're driving around, you got the sweet sound of an engine singing behind you, and then suddenly it just starts to get mechanical and grimy and gnashing, and then it goes ka-chunk, ka-chunk, stop, and it's silent. What's that like?
It happens so quickly nowadays. You don't tend to drive round on 5 cylinders or with smoke pouring out of the back for too long like you used to. You used to be able to do a lap or so with just bits of metal and everything coming out the back. Now it's like Latifi there, just gets about 400 metres and it all goes clunk to a stop. But it's testing. He now knows he's not going to be going anywhere for a while. We've got lunch coming up in 55 minutes, but he'll be having a long lunch. And it's just a shame, puts you on the back foot, but at least it's testing.
No, but when that silence comes and you realise that either your session or your qualifying or your race or your practice session is over, is it like,
Yeah.
the unwelcome silence?
Yeah, it's worse when it happens on the warm-up lap, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I had that a couple of times.
When was that?
I had that Bahrain 2016 and then Silverstone 2017, home race, everyone up, qualified 11th, great shot at some points. Halfway round I just get fluid poured all over me and the hydraulics went.
And then when you get out the car, you get someone on the other side of the barrier saying, "Oh." Right, Jolien.
Yeah.
Sorry
No,
about that, mate.
I'm really not.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's gutting. And on a race weekend, you realise how much everyone puts in for 90 minutes, and when something like that happens, all of the 4 hours of driving, but the meetings, the hard work, and everything is done like that, and you go home and it was all pointless.
I'm sure it sounds how it feels, because it sounded pretty messy at the end there. Valtteri Bottas has the fastest time of this session with a 1:15.7, 42 laps on the board. That time set on the C5 tyres. Confirmation of that on your screen. So Esteban Ocon's time, along with Stroll and Kvyat, all set on the C4. 17.1 for Ocon, 17.3 for Stroll, 17.4 for Kvyat. Max Verstappen lost a little bit of time in this session with damage to the car after going over the curb at turn 8. He's in 5th. Antonio Giovinazzi on the C3 tyres in 6th. Then Sainz and Grosjean Then we have Sebastian Vettel, who brought out the first of the red flags after an issue for Ferrari. His best time on the C3 tyres. Nicholas Latifi bringing out the second red flag, as you have just seen, and lost time before that earlier on with the garage doors down, so the floor off for the car. And we are expecting to see the other drivers that you have listed there. They will all be appearing this afternoon in the final 4 hours of the first test.
What's interesting then, Bottas 15.7, 3/10 adrift of his own pole time from last year, which I think is the quickest lap ever recorded on this new Barcelona circuit. So next week, if not in the rest of the day, we're going to see a new lap record for this track. But they're on the C5 tyre, and they're clearly, this is a complete different mentality from Mercedes last year, where they just did nothing, and then the final afternoon they were like, okay, let's give this a go. Whereas Ferrari, and now they've
gone the other way,
gone role reversal. The two of them, Mercedes showing their hand, see if anyone else could do it. They've literally shown their new DAS, and now they've shown the pace that they can do with it, and they're just saying, right, that's it, 15.7, what can you do? And I don't know, the whole sandbagging philosophy, I kind of don't see the point anymore, because why not just do a 15.7? Everyone knows that Mercedes is going to be just about the team to beat. It's not like if Mercedes are languishing 8th out of 10, everyone's thinking, oh, we don't need to watch what Mercedes are doing, they're slow. So why not just, see what the car's like on low fuel? It helps the drivers to get more of a feel.
How do we know it's on low fuel?
That's more of a worry.
They could have done, what if they could have done
Careful,
15?
guys.
What if they could have done a 15.7 with 30 kilos of fuel in?
Then everyone else might as well pack up.
I mean, they're doing this because they want an answer. That's logical and obvious. They're not just doing it. They wouldn't do it. It's not a very smart thing to do if you just want to.
They don't need a glory run.
They don't need a glory run. All right, maybe they want a qualifying simulation now around lunchtime, and then have a lunch break, set the car up for the roll, put the car on for the race, top up all the fuel, put the fuel in, oil in, whatever, and then they'll do a race this afternoon. So maybe this is a little bit of a qualifying session.
Yeah, exactly. They don't need a glory run, but it can help to run the car with 10 kilos of fuel in. You don't need to run it on absolute fumes like you're doing qualifying, but for the drivers, it's better to head to Melbourne having driven the car with low fuel to see how dynamic the car is, the change of direction, how zippy you can be on the brakes, aggressive with it. It's beneficial to do that with 10 kilos or 5 kilos than it is to drive every day with 30 or 40 when it's a bit more lumbersome. It does show your hand, but the question is really, does that even matter if other drivers can see or other teams can see what pace they're doing?
Yep. It's obvious, but we should say, because Latifi conked out at the end of the pit lane, it was a very short red flag, and a minute and a half ago, 2 minutes ago, it was action again, green light, and so Bottas and Verstappen back out.
Verstappen up to 52 laps. C2's still on. Red Bull they've not shown a lot either, really. Some good laps for Verstappen and signs of pace, but they're also holding back a little bit without any. I remember Red Bull usually quite early on in week one, the late morning, which we're coming up to, sticking on a set of ultra softs or hyper softs and giving it a bit of a go. But they seem to be holding back, similar to Ferrari, although Ferrari still in the garage with that engine change.
One of the new parts that arrived from Red Bull in the transit van from Milton Keynes was a new headrest. Everything else was in boxes, so I couldn't actually tell which bits were there. But I don't think the headrest is a performance part. It has to be a certain size, shape, and material for safety reasons. So it just must be a spare. And we can all get excited, can't we, when we see boxfuls of transit vans arriving from the UK at testing, but a lot of the time they are just spares of stuff that they don't already have.
Or you can crack a headrest if you get out too quickly from the car or something. You can actually damage the headrest without damaging, because the drivers before they actually turn a wheel have to do the jump out test, and people have been known to damage. I think I've damaged a Formula 1 headrest because you've got to get out. It used to be 5 seconds to get out, 5 seconds to put the wheel back on. It's now a bit longer because it's tougher to get out with the halo on.
Yeah.
But it might simply be
It might be.
spares, as you said.
I mean, this year actually, the Red Bull headrest has grown a little fin, hasn't it? We just saw it on that shot before. I think it's on the X of Citrix. If you're looking for the logo.
with the 44 laps under his belt, and they managed to move that fairly quickly. How was it trackside? Well,
I was just down the bottom of the pit lane as Nicholas Latifi ground to a halt, a puff of blue smoke, whilst also simultaneously setting his fastest lap of the day, I think. Didn't he? Yeah, I think he did.
was that the first? How strange.
Yes, and it was sort of the same time that Bottas set that ridiculous 15.7. Yes, no, having an interview with this chap's teammate, actually, Roman's teammate, Kevin Magnussen, on the F1 Instagram live. So that was good. It was really good. He's in fine spirits, enjoying the car. He's going to have a race run, race sim this afternoon if everything goes to plan and there's no red flags. So I've probably just jinxed that for him. But yeah, no, feeling good in the car, feeling optimistic. It was interesting. You know, I said to him, which cars have you found the most impressive out on track? And he said, well, there's the obvious. I said, okay, well, let's not talk about Mercedes. He said, honestly, it's the Force India. And then corrected himself and said Racing Point. But yeah, they're very impressed with that. And his opinion on it is, well, we've had this relationship with Ferrari for as long as we've had. Racing Point obviously have their relationship with Mercedes in terms of their engine and their gearbox and everything else. And if you've got the opportunity to do it, why wouldn't you? So, certainly from the driver's perspective, they're quite understanding of the situation and quite sort of looking forward to the challenge of fighting them.
From the Haas driver's perspective.
Yes, because
maybe not the Renault.
Maybe not the Renault and
McLaren
McLaren drivers.
Perspective.
Well, that was telling with that Daniel interview with Rosanna earlier, wasn't it? And that very first question, "Hey Daniel, how's testing going?" Total silence in the response, and literally just moving the conversation on. I think there's worry, discontent at least, shall we say, down at Renault.
I'm looking forward to this afternoon, though. If you say Magnussen's got a race run, Ricciardo's got a race run, they both hopefully will fuel it up and we'll get a race, not on the track but on the lap times.
It'd be great if they just did like a lap and then sort of on the grid went.
Yeah, be very good. There's plenty of fans here that would absolutely love to see that. We're getting a hint of some racing at the moment with Max Verstappen closing up the back of his former teammate.
Is it just me, or is the nose on the Red Bull slightly thinner? It's maybe just me, I don't know, maybe it's a trick of the light. But it looks kind of pinched.
We'll have a look at some point.
Pinched at the tip of the nose, just coming down that sort of... It's interesting because the McLaren's deceptive, because it's actually the livery that makes that nose look thinner than it is. There's the black shading around the side of the orange. It's not quite as thin as it looks. The Renault one really is incredibly narrow.
Yeah, there's no hiding that one because the livery's just in black.
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
But Verstappen just charged straight past Carlos Sainz in a straight line, and Sainz is still pushing. Up towards turn 4, what's pace is he doing? 1 minute 23.7. So this is a race run for Sainz, still going, and 59 laps for the day, nothing particularly quick. C2 tyres, fighting the wheel a little bit, maybe in a turbulent area as Verstappen passed him. McLaren still just churning out the laps, particularly with Sainz at the wheel, but not showing anything too much. But they've got their race run this morning. Norris is going to take over this afternoon. Maybe he'll do a race run as well and we're going to compare, or maybe they'll give Lando a chance to get some softer tyres on him and maybe a bit less fuel.
So Sainz is going to complete this lap. Keep your questions coming in to hashtag F1 inbox.
He might not complete this lap. He's completely backed off it now, picking something out of the cockpit, it looked like. Throwing it out. Is he going to come into the pits now at the end of this one? Or is he just having a breather and going again through the final couple of corners, and he's going to have another crack?
Lee Mullen asks, if the teams are using one car for testing, then which one of their drivers' cars are they using? Is the other one sitting all shiny and new ready for Australia? If so, will one have a lot of miles on it and the other one not?
They're using the only one they have because the other one's being built at the moment, and this is one of the drivers' cars for Australia. They get new chassis at various times through the year. One of the drivers will be using the car they're all driving now. One will get a shiny new one for Australia. This one will have miles on it, but that could be a good thing as well. Sometimes with a completely brand new chassis, it's all been wired again, it's all been put together again from scratch. Occasionally you can find something not quite right in Melbourne, and this one shouldn't. I mean, actually, this on the back of this week, it will have quite a lot of miles on it. But so long as it hasn't had any big smash or anything, then it'll be absolutely fine.
Had a lot of questions into hashtag F1 inbox about Formula 2 and about Mick Schumacher. And Mick Schumacher's results do not reveal the pace he had 1 year ago. A lot of these questions being asked in relationship to Ferrari. He had a lot better pace than his championship position suggests. I'd expect him to be contending for the title this year. He's certainly with a team that has a history of doing so. To roll about 5 or 6 tweets into one there should be a phenomenal Formula 2 season, as we get a replay of Carlos Sainz just backing off before he went again.
I think he was just picking out, it must have been a bit of rubber or a bit of some debris discard that got stuck on the wing mirror mount there. So he obviously just saw it, distracted him, picked it up, chucked it out of the car for someone else to probably collect in a couple of laps' time.
Never let it be said that Flov's application is not an art form.
It was very artistic, wasn't it? A bit of flair there.
I mean, it's great, isn't it? You just got to literally just chuck it on. Chuck it on. I always find it interesting that Mercedes go for the sort of translucent, almost clear Flovis, which I believe you pick out with the UV light, as a lot of people go for the very obvious neon Flovis that gives everybody an idea of what you're trying to determine.
It's a bit bluey, purple on the central part of the front wing where the nose joins there. So that's just going to now get all the airflow, especially right at the front of the car. It's going to get all the airflow, and that paint they've just slopped on the front is going to move to be in a different position when it comes back in, and that'll measure the direction the air is going and what shape it's taking underneath that part of the car. And that's Flovis.
It isn't it? It's clever stuff. I mean, it's theoretically quite a simple idea. Chuck a whole load of liquid onto it, see where the airflow goes, and once it's dried, we'll be able to pick it out. There are some wonderfully simple solutions to very complex issues. It's like watching the Ford versus Ferrari movie when they taped a whole load of string onto the GT40 to see what the airflow is, because they actually did that. Back in the 60s, they actually did that to see what the aerodynamics were doing and realised where it was stalling. Very clever. I remember back in the days of Caterham/Lotus, and they were trying to figure out the clearance that they had when they were turning their wheels inside the hub. And they bought a whole, I think it was John Eiley, bought a lot of Oasis. You know, the green stuff that you put flowers in, and it keeps the flowers moist, you know, gives them the moisture. Because it's quite porous, and when you push it, obviously it doesn't spring back. So he just filled the wheel rim with Oasis, so that when they turned the wheels, it made an imprint, so they could see where everything was moving. Simple solution to a complex issue.
I like it. Crude, but effective.
But yeah.
It's strange in the age we got now with aero rakes and sensors on everything to electronically measure everything, to have the flow vids.
Yeah, I was thinking that when they were applying it.
It feels really old-fashioned compared to data and sensors and everything else, but they all still do it. So I guess for areas like the central part of the front wing, it's very difficult to get sensors and an aero rake on there. Whereas it's much easier to bolt it on the side of the car, in the bargeboard area, to see the air deflection in and around the front or rear axle.
Very intrigued to hear from you on hashtag F1 inbox. If you've been watching every single day, if you've been watching every session, if you've been with us through this entire testing journey so far, let us know, and we will in a moment. Now, we've been mentioning Drive to Survive. It's time to go down to the breakout star of season 1, and we can go down to the pit lane where we can hear, I think in a few moments time, from Laura Winter, and I think you already know who she's with.
I'm here at the Haas garage, and I've stumbled upon Gunther Steiner. I've had to fight off the fans, haven't I, asking you for autographs, signatures, selfies from the Netflix fame. How is that going for you?
That was a little bit of an exaggeration here, you know. No, there is a lot of people here. I think it's a good thing that the fans can come here. Just televise the whole thing, and for sure, people which come to a test, they're normally big fans of F1, and they know people.
And you're now the centre of their attention, as well as the drivers.
Again, I'm not the centre of attention. There is other people more important than me here. Yeah, there's quite a lot of people which know about me, so they try to get a picture or an autograph.
Yeah, it's good to see. It's good to see. Talk me through testing. How are you feeling about it all? What is the car telling you? What is the feedback from the drivers telling you?
Drivers are pretty happy. They are never completely happy because then they would commit to something which they don't like to do. So, no, in general, I think they are pretty happy with the balance compared to last year's car. But it's very early to say how competitive we are. But yesterday and the day before, we had 2 good days of testing. This morning's with a small problem, but now it's going well. So, all in all, testing is going well. We are learning a lot. We still don't know where we are in the ranking.
And of course, a good chance to see what other teams have been up to over the winter as well. Your take on that Mercedes steering wheel?
I don't know exactly what they are doing. There is still a lot of speculation, and I don't want to be part of that one. So once I really find out, or once I get to know what is done, then I've got a bigger picture. But we all know they
very noisy in here. Grosjean, that spin yesterday. How was he after that one? Any damage sustained to the car? What was the sort of fallout from that?
No, just the rear wing. Just the rear wing. Nothing else is broken. So the car was back together this morning. Fine, no problem.
All good then at Haas.
So far, so good. Not all good. So far, so good.
Excellent. And final question: next week, what will you be looking to work on from this?
Just doing more work over the next days. The engineers digest the data they got this week, and next week for sure we've got a lot of other things to test and see, and I think the picture will get clear where we are at and where we need to work at to get ready for Melbourne.
Fabulous, thank you very much. I'll let the fans come in now to get their autographs, yeah? Thank you very much.
Gunther Steiner there speaking to Laura Winter. I think he's fairly safe from autographs.
He hates the attention.
Oh, does he? Does he? I'm not entirely sure about that. It's fairly obvious when the crew are standing around you and they've got the directional mics. Great value.
No, but he hates the fact that everyone knows who he is. That
really?
He's become this star. He doesn't.
Well, he's got a prominent position with the Formula One team.
He's not watched it.
He's not watched it? Is that true?
That's true. It's true. Not watched it. So he understands.
I think he might.
That he's a thing.
And the producer's going to get a Block Caps email one day.
Yeah, but he gets it, but he doesn't really understand because he's not watched it.
Right.
I think like the first time you hear your voice.
Yeah.
On something, and you're like, oh, yeah, no. I think he doesn't really want to watch it back, not realizing how much of a massive hero he's become in the process.
How strange. We're gonna have to show him. We'll have to do a F1 version of Gogglebox where we show him himself in that documentary.
Yes.
And he can finally realise why he has such cult status.
F1 Watch.
Yes.
Yeah, did that. Was that last year?
We'll just do a Gunther version.
Yeah.
There we are. Ideas meeting on air. Useful.
There you go.
On board with Antonio Giovinazzi. 20 minutes to go. No one lighting up the timing page at the moment. Still that headline benchmark time from Valtteri Bottas is the 1:15.7.
I don't know. Lance Stroll has just done the fastest speed trap in Sector 1.
Well, if you say nothing's going to happen as a commentator, usually that does the trick.
That's the trick, doesn't it?
20 minutes ago, more like testing. A couple of red flags, few issues across the board. Teams having to do a serious amount of work today. This is almost what we expected from the start.
It's day 3, isn't it? Everyone's starting to push that little bit, just start to stretch the limitations of the car, start to lean on it a little bit more. I said to Kevin Magnussen a little bit ago, and he was saying, 2 days so far have mostly been spent just going through systems checks and making sure that everything works and just pounding out the laps and making sure that the basics don't fail. It's really from this point on that the drivers can start to have their say, start to make setup changes, start to really fine-tune the car to take it to Australia. This is where the hard work begins. They've gone through the process of elimination that everything works. Now that they know everything works is when they can start to test it, and that's the critical word, test it, to make sure that, yes, we've got our baseline, we know it's all pretty much bulletproof, let's see how far we can push it. Let's see how much speed we can draw out of it. Let's see what we can do with it in the remaining, well, now 3.5 days of testing. No, we weren't, but we can do.
And everything else, getting ready for Daniel Ricciardo.
How long does that take? It's going to take an hour and 20 minutes.
It took them an hour and 20 minutes the other day. They said it took them. No, it won't take them very long. But it's something they've got to do. They've only got an hour and 20 minutes till they're back out.
Exactly.
So obviously they've got something else going on with the car, but they might as well use that time to.
That was their excuse the other day, wasn't it? For the long delay. We had to change the pedals.
Yeah, no, exactly. And they lost that time. Apparently, it took them 2 hours 20 minutes because they missed an hour and 20 of the afternoon session.
Yikes.
But I guess because Daniel was saying earlier on they want to do a race run, he's been a bit short of laps as well. They want to absolutely make sure that they're out on the green for the afternoon, and just one of the things they've got to do. But there's 6 drivers that are going to be different for this afternoon than there are this morning, so there's going to be 6 teams that are doing the same thing.
Interesting getting a look on board with Lance Stroll. He was really fighting the car earlier today, really hammering those gear changes as well. He still is. Look at him. Well, you know, in a lot of onboards, you see the if you watch his left index finger, and middle finger, and right, and he's changing gear. A lot of them are quite smooth on the up and down shifts, but he's really giving it a good whack.
Yeah, he's got some leverage in his middle finger there to get down the gears. You want to try and get through those downshifts typically as quickly as you can to downshift whilst you've still got downforce on the car, driving at a higher speed.
It's properly,
making sure they go in. It's not like the old days where they wouldn't go in unless you downshift too early, and then the software stops you from overrevving the engine.
This is what I was wondering, and I sort of asked the question earlier, if they've changed the steering wheel this year, or if it's just quite stiff and he's having to give it a bit of a.
As if they've moved the paddle further away, so he's actually got to get more.
Got to reach for it.
Yeah, he's got to extend his fingers more to get around it.
It's certainly far more noticeable than it's been. I don't know if that's just his style, but
maybe. The gear changes just become absolutely automatic. You don't even think about them.
Really?
You come up to a corner, you've got to downshift 5 or 6 gears. You don't need to count or anything. They just happens, all in your subconscious. He won't be thinking about what he's doing on those gear changes at all. That'll just be how he's automatically driving. There's so much more you got to worry on than downshifting or upshifting.
Have you ever downshifted too many and then forgotten? You suddenly sort of found yourself in first gear where you weren't supposed to be in first gear.
That you can do that at the start of a Grand Prix, because you approach corners in different speeds. There's cars everywhere. You're driving a lot more on instinct.
Okay.
And there you can find yourself in a different gear. But generally, it feels right, it sounds right when you're in the right gear, and you know about it when you're downshifting. You can hear the note of the engine. You can feel the engine braking when you're downshifting as well. And you just build up this sort of experience or knowledge base of what is right for the speed of corner you want to go. And it's the start of the race when you've got cars everywhere and you get to a corner or you're making an overtaking move. That's typically where you might downshift too far. You're panicking, you're late on the brakes, you've got a guy next to you and you're all locked up. Then you just want to hammer it down the gears, and then sometimes you can downshift too many.
It is incredible because we talk about it, and not having experienced it, the unconscious part of what a racing driver does, that, and as you say, it just becomes natural. You're driving, you're shifting up, you're shifting down, you're in. Is that how you get into the zone? That so much of what you're doing is just instinct, that it is natural, that you're not even thinking about it, that when it comes to the overtaking or when the car steps out on you and you have to react to that, that's when everything suddenly kicks in, that everything else is in that zonal place that almost seems to slow it down, so you're in the zone.
It's all second nature. Everything you do in the car, driving around a lap of Barcelona is completely second nature. And then it's then having the spare capacity in your brain, because you're not thinking about downshifting 4 gears at the next corner. You are thinking about your brake point, because the brake point sets up the entire corner. You brake at the right point, you arrive at the right speed to the corner, you hook up your apex, everything else comes naturally. You brake 5 meters early, then you start having to think about it. Then you release the brakes, you carry speed, you change the pitch of the car, you brake too late, you're locking up, you're panicking, and you're also thinking about it. So you've got to concentrate on your brake point. Everything else is just second nature. So then you can think about your strategy, obviously the balance of the car, the feedback and everything else. That's what you're thinking about. You're not thinking about the basics of driving the car, the basics of throttle application. It just is second nature.
Amazing. Great insight into the mind of a racing driver.
AlphaTauri. 13 minutes to go. Daniel Kvyat.
Tauri. Tauri. Got to get it right.
Are we sure about this?
Sounds like a TV
100%.
show.
Yes, it's the TV show, not the political party.
Progress. Let's not get political.
Let's not. Kvyat then, how's his morning been? Where is he? P4. Not bad, 117.4. 52 laps on the... Not as many laps today. As we've seen, Hamilton and the like knocking up 100 plus laps in the morning sessions over the last couple of days. Max today so far, 77. Oh, that actually is Max. Verstappen. 77 laps.
Yeah, so things beginning to be turned up, and as you've both said, pushing to the limit a little bit more, and in doing so, more and more problems developing.
Well, here's the thing, isn't it? Ocon's on a 117.1. He's P2 at the moment, so he's top of everybody that's not a Mercedes.
Yeah, on the C4s.
On the C4s, true. Valtteri's time was on the C5s, though, right?
Yep.
So, but we're
Don't panic everyone.
No. So we're sitting here wondering whether Renault are in deep water.
Yeah.
Are they? It's so hard to tell, but Daniel's responses, Daniel's body language in that interview, and what he was saying, it doesn't promote much confidence.
Especially given how tight it was in the midfield last year.
But that Ocon time, Kvyat in 4th is 3/10 slower on the C3s, setting it earlier.
And that's what, half a second difference in the tyre, or
It could be. We've not got a huge amount of data on that, but typically it might be half a second across compounds. And it's also slower than Kimi's time yesterday in the Alfa Romeo. I'm sure those midfielders will be close. They'll all be there or thereabouts. I don't think Renault appear to have made a big leap towards the top 3, but they said pre-season, they said this might be a tougher year because of all the changes that have gone on with personnel. Changes in the chassis design team, changes in the aero leadership as well. So the people that have basically designed this car are no longer there. The people that have the technical director no longer there. Nick Chester's left. Pat Fry's come in. This isn't a Pat Fry car, so there's slight complications when you have that. So there was a bit of chatter about that. The car seems to be going okay though. It looks quite nice from the outside, and it seems to be going okay.
The worry for me is they seem to be getting their excuses in early. You know, as you were saying, with the team going, and Cyril's already said, well, this car is obviously, it's a product of a team that's no longer here, and so it's not quite what we wanted it to be, and that's an alarm bell ringing early for me.
Yeah, it's certainly a big change to last year when they came out bullish about bridging the gap. As you always get the midfield team that's thinking they're going to be King Kong of the midfield and going to join the A race, and it hasn't really happened.
Yeah.
But this year that's Racing Point and not Renault. And
are Renault trying to be two? Sort of the other way this year. Like last year we said we didn't do everything. This year we said we'll do nothing, and then if we do something, we'll be all right.
Well, that's what happened to McLaren last year. They did great, and they said we're not even putting any expectations this year after the Alonso Van Dorn year of 2018, where it was miserable in the end.
Yeah.
Came and just said, look, we just want to consolidate and learn, and ended up almost being that team that bridged the gap to the A race in the end. The big three teams were comfortably 4th in the constructors, 2 drivers scoring points, getting into Q3 on the reg. It was good stuff, and that came from no expectations. So basically, expectations means nothing at this
Yeah.
stage.
Expectations are downfall, isn't it, ultimately?
Yeah, it has been for the last year, but this year it's Racing Point, and they look good. Racing Point.
They do. They look really good. And after all the difficulties they've been through, and we just made the point, the pink Mercedes and blah blah and all of that. Honestly, talking about Williams having a year of rejuvenation, I think everybody will be happy that Racing Point are back in a position of strength. Not necessarily their rivals, but as fans of the sport, we can look at it and say this was a team that was in administration 18 months ago.
Absolutely.
And to be back now with solid investors, with a solid future, with Aston Martin coming on board for the future, and with a car which is one of the most exciting, one of the most talked about of this pre-season testing period, what a wonderful story, what a wonderful turnaround for a team which very nearly didn't exist. And that's lovely.
And this was a team with limited budget that was bang for buck. That was their
best of the
tagline,
game.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Bingo.
So now they have more bucks, they have more bang, and this is where we're at basically. So is it that surprising that they can build a great car? Should we be calling them Racing Point, the pink Mercedes, etc.? I mean, there is a lot of similarities, and that's where that's come from. But
I mean, they've said it themselves.
Yeah.
They took the car, they took the photographs, they copied it.
indeed, but they've always been able to build a good car with resource, even
Yeah.
with limited resource. They've built a car that can be fourth in the constructors. So now they've got investment. They're able to exploit it.
And all of this coming a year before a massive regulation change, a cost cap. They're setting themselves up to be contenders. They really are.
Aston Martin.
Yeah.
You mentioned the cost cap.
Yeah.
I know we have a lot of fans who sometimes only like F1, but in the wider world of sport, the cost cap has sometimes been effective and sometimes led to some very high-profile punishments being dished out.
Manchester City.
And Saracens in
And Saracens, of course, in
Rugby.
the Rugger.
in England.
Yeah.
So, is it just inevitable
That someone's going to fall foul of it.
that someone's going to break the cost cap, or will it have the overarching effect? Will it bring everyone closer together, and you're going to eventually get caught out? What do you think? Good thing, bad thing?
Imagine, for the sake of argument, that one of the big teams who are used to spending hundreds of millions of dollars every year, as opposed to everyone from, your Racing Points along the pit lane who are used to spending a sixth of the same budget. Then if one of the big guns actually did, try to get something, that's marketing budget. Come on. Suspension's not marketing. Imagine they were found not to have played by the rules. Imagine they had a Saracens or a Manchester City type punishment levied on them. It could be the big equaliser, it could be the big thing, it could be crazy. We haven't had a decent political fallout in Formula 1 for a good long time.
It's going to happen. I'm not saying that the punishment and the Saracens and Man City and everything else, but the way that the cost cap is a very good thing that I completely think needs coming into Formula 1, because it would be great for teams like Haas, for teams like Racing Point and Renault and McLaren that operate on smaller budgets than the big three. We want them competing for wins and not just talking about best of the rest the whole time.
Yeah, totally agree.
But there's so many other areas that it's so difficult to police. When Mercedes have HPP power units, what budget goes to that? What budget goes to Mercedes Automotive or Ferrari Automotive or Red Bull? They're all, none of them are just Formula 1 teams, so you can just see the accounts and see that, which I think will make it very difficult to police. But even if it is much closer than it is now, that has to be a good thing, and hopefully there will be tough sanctions for people that break it, which will be a good deterrent. I'm sure that's being worked up over the course of the year.
Yeah, it's a tall task to police that, but the one thing that the cost caps usually do in the other sports is they do condense things, and then eventually someone gets caught. And it feels very Formula 1 that someone's going to get caught at some point, but you're going to need forensic accountants, I think, hired for the FIA to police it.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting back to the spirit of the rules, chat,
Yep.
and if the teams can do anything they possibly can to gain an advantage, they will. If the big teams that have more budget than the cost cap permits them to have can use that in an effective way, they will do it if they think they can get away with it. But they've got to be pretty sure they can get away with it, because the sanctions would be huge if they can't. So
You then have some teams raising their spending for that cost cap, and then you have some teams like the big three having that spending absolutely slashed, which could lead to, you don't want to see people losing their jobs, but it could lead to a redistribution of personnel in Formula One, a bit more spreading the talent out.
yeah,
perhaps.
but I think having a more competitive Formula One across the board is got to be a key outcome. It's great seeing the fight between Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Vettel, the six big guys. It's brilliant fight when they have the fight, but too often they don't, and there's only those three in the race for the win for years upon years now, really. Williams were flirting with it when the hybrid rules came in, took a pole position, led a Grand Prix.
Yeah.
That was absolutely the top of what they could do, but what we need is that there can be more teams in it.
We certainly hope that's going to be the case. But back to this year then, Valtteri Bottas on the softest tyre available to him, 65 laps and the fastest time of a 1:15.7. Then Esteban Ocon, Lance Stroll and Daniel Kvyat all setting their times on the C4s, and it was a 76 lap, 52 and 59 for those drivers. Max Verstappen lost a little bit of time after running over the curves at turn 8. And then we had 84 laps for him. Antonio Giovinazzi 65 laps. Carlos Sainz with 73 logged. Romain Grosjean with 48. Sebastian Vettel with the issue that interrupted his morning after 40 laps completed. Nicholas Latifi brought out the second red flag after setting his best time on the C3 tyres, and 44 laps for him. This afternoon, 4 more hours as Test 1 concludes with Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly, Magnussen, Albon and Hamilton going in there. We've already heard that we're going to be seeing some race simulations. So the running order for Formula One in 2020, it's going to become more apparent. We're going to get more of a picture due to the teams doing those full race simulations, looking for 66 laps for the distance of a Spanish Grand Prix around this circuit as we bring this first session to a close. Well, my thanks to Ted Kravitz, to Rosanna Tennant, to Laurel Winter, Jolyon Palmer, the cast of characters that we've had. It is going to be very interesting. We're going to have everyone back up here. We're going to have Tom Clarkson joining us, and it is going to be very, very intriguing. What are you looking forward to this afternoon, Jolyon?
Long runs.
Yes.
We'll get a better compare across. Certainly Ricciardo and Magnussen will be doing them. Hamilton likely will as well, following in Bottas's footsteps yesterday. And it's always a nice, better chance to compare because they should be on similar fuel loads, doing a similar run, hopefully, at the same time.
Well, it is set up really nicely. We'll get back to some of your tweets to hashtag F1 inbox as well. All of them that you've sent will not be in vain. We'll get to them in the afternoon. For now, thanks for your company. We're back.